Now let's look at how the random values from a given probability distribution are generated. Okay, we looked at uh, an example of how to get random values from a normal distribution in the previous example. So let's formally look at how it is done. Okay, so generating random numbers from probability distributions is done by first generating a value between 0 and 1. Okay, so we looked at the function rand that generates value from 0 to 1. And since it's a value from 0 to 1 and probability is a value from 0 to 1, the whatever value the rand function generates can be used as the cumulative probability. Okay, and if you take the probability distribution that you're interested in, okay, normal distribution, uniform distribution, exponential distribution, or whatever other distributions you may have, and then you come up with a cumulative distribution for that selected probability distribution. So you have the outcomes of the probability distribution. Say if you have normal distribution with mean of 100 and standard deviation of 50 or something, then you start from the smallest value, and in increments you go to the highest possible value, and then plot the cumulative probability on the y-axis. And that cumulative probability will be something like this, or it could be, for a uniform distribution, as you will see, it will be a straight line. So it will start with 0 and it will end with 1. The cumulative probability cannot be more than 1. So it may be a straight line distribution, or it could be a curved line like this, or it could be a curved line like that. Okay. And that depends upon the type of theoretical distribution that we want to use. So then you take the random number that we generated. So it generates a random number between 0 and 1, right? So say rand. So that generates a number. So 0.9074. So you go to 0.9074 and then go across to the curve and then down and see what the x value is. And that's the x value coming from that particular probability distribution. So this is the process by which random values are generated from any given probability distribution. Okay, let's first look at how it is done in a uniform distribution. Okay. Now, what is a uniform distribution? It's a continuous distribution. It is symmetric. It is bounded on both directions. So that means it's a uniform distribution between a minimum value and a maximum value. It's a range. Okay. So it's bounded on both sides. Okay. It's not necessarily positive values for the bound. So it could be a value like minus 100 through minus 50, or it could be minus 200 through 1000, and things like that. So you have a minimum value and then you have a maximum value. Now let's assume that the x values go from 0 to 1, or maybe even better, x values go from 0 to say 10, right? Let's change that to one more. Okay. Now we want, this is a continuous distribution, but for a moment, to understand how this works, let's assume that we're going to give probability for each interval. So it will be from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and so on. So let's set up the intervals. So the intervals are that, and we're going to concatenate with an ampersand sign like that, and another ampersand sign after that dash, that. So that gives you 0 to 1, okay, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and then 9 to 10. So those are the intervals that we have. So there are 10 intervals. Since it's a uniform distribution, the 10 intervals, they have the equal probability, right? So it's 1 over 10. And that's the probability all the way through. So that's our uniform probability. And if you plot the uniform probability, it's going to look like this. So take the probability, plot data. We're going to use line plot now this time because the x-axis is not numeric. So let's do a line plot. Okay. Then it doesn't have x-axis set up. So select data, edit x-axis, that. Okay. So this is what uniform distribution is going to look like. The continuous distribution, it has a bound on the left side and the right side. Same probability for equal intervals all the way through. Now if you do a cumulative probability, so cumulative probability will be the same probability there, and then you can set it up in this fashion too. You can say sum of that with itself, right? Then the first one should be absolute reference. So that way when you copy, it'll always be sum from there, from this cell D10 all the way down. Okay, so down to a given cell. So now we have that. Okay, so now we have the cumulative probability, right? Now we want the cumulative probability graph to be something like this, where the cumulative probability is on the y-axis, okay, and then on the x values are on the x-axis. Okay. So we do cumulative probability. We have a line chart like that. Okay. And then we go to select data and put the interval there. Okay. Now let's set the x-axis, y-axis to be 0 to 1, and the axis titles to be, this is the x value from uniform distribution. Okay. And y-axis is your cumulative probability. So now if you want cumulative probability, if you want a random value from this uniform distribution 0 to 10, you generate a cumulative probability using the rand function, right? So then you take that value, go to the cumulative probability here, then go across and find the corresponding x value. That's what happens here when you do a rand function. Okay, so in Excel, okay, to generate a random number from any uniform distribution, this is how you do it, right? So we have the rand function generates random number only from 0 to 1, but we want random values from any limits. So for example, if you want a random value between 50 and 100, then this is what we need to do. Have the minimum value. Okay, so that's your left end. And then your rand function times the range. You add that to the minimum value. So that will generate a random number. So min value plus, you find the range, times rand. So that will give you a random number between 50 and 100. Now, if you want round numbers, then we have another function called rand between, and rand between will give you rand between. If you specify, you need to specify the minimum value and the maximum value. So this will give you a rounded number. Okay, so the basic Excel functions for generating random numbers are rand. Okay, and with rand, then you can generate your random values using the formula, and then you have rand between.